Hello and welcome to Grody and Unprofessional. My name is Justin McMenemy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons I have acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. In this episode, we discuss the importance of tailoring your leadership style to specific situations. Spoiler alert, if you find that you are using the phrase, "because I said so," regularly, you're probably doing it wrong. Caleb Schleder, welcome back to Grody and Unprofessional. If I count correctly, this is your third guest appearance on this podcast.
3 times.
I don't know the official rules. I think if you keep coming back at some point, I'm going to have to cut you in on the royalties of this thing.
I'll take you up on that.
I'm glad you did, because it was a trap. There's actually costs. It's not royalties. There's costs that are associated, and I'm glad you agreed to help start splitting those.
Yeah, just send me the invoice.
That's right. Today, what I want to spend time talking about is a construct. It's a chassis of thinking about leadership, and it's called situational leadership. Situational leadership is probably the single most impactful mindset in leadership that I have ever been introduced to. If a leader comes to me, a brand new leader, just became a team lead, just got their first employee, and they say, "What should I know about leadership?" The first thing I introduce them to is situational leadership. There is so much that can be built on situational leadership. Most people, as they start their leadership journey, they have in their mind all of the leaders that they've experienced in their career or in their life. It could be elementary school teachers. It could be principals. It could be football coaches. It could be people from their church or from their community. The first thing a leader does usually as they come into leadership is they say, "Here's the type of leaders I really liked, so I want to be like that person. And here's the type of leaders I really didn't like. I'm never going to be like that." Before we get too far into situational leadership, just for funsies, I would like to know, Caleb, across the leaders that you've experienced, what are the styles that you say, "Man, if I could be like a leader, it would be these character traits"? And what are the ones that historically you say, "If I smell that coming, I have no interest in being part of it"?
Yeah. If I go back in time, high school, I loved playing basketball. I had an amazing coach on my JV basketball squad. He was an awesome leader for me to understand the approach of giving guidance and let you run with it until I need to coach you again. Here's the insight I'm going to give you on how you could do that better, and then I'm going to let you have the freedom to go and demonstrate that. That was an element that I really enjoyed, because then if I demonstrated it in a way that wasn't exactly aligned to how he said, but I was still successful, he was like, "Attaboy." And for me, that was really important, because he wasn't so stuck in his ways that it had to be done exactly the way that he said it was.
Yeah.
But he gave me an opportunity to understand in my own style and my own approach how to still be successful. That was a leadership style that I really appreciated, that I've wanted to emulate in my own style. That's something that was really helpful to me. And then kind of vice versa, the leadership styles that once I sniff, I start to run the other way, is really the micromanager. If you go all the way back into my professional career, I look at seasons of my life where I've had seasons of really awesome leadership, and it's often followed by a season of leadership that is going to teach me how not to do things.
Yeah.
One season that really has stuck out to me was the micromanagement season.
Yeah.
The season where it wasn't wet behind the ears, I wasn't green in my career, but I was still being micromanaged to a level that I honestly started questioning my own capabilities of if I'm effective in my professional career.
Yeah.
And it was to a point where I was sitting in an office, there was a PowerPoint presentation up on the screen. I was the one creating the PowerPoint presentation, and there was a leader that was telling me how to create the slide and how to format the slide and how to make sure I'm changing these boxes and telling me to move it over a little bit to the left.
Right.
At that moment, I'm sitting there. I can still remember the chair I was sitting in, the direction I was heading west. That's how
it's burned in.
It's burned in. at that moment, I was like, I'm never going to do this.
Right.
This is not a leadership style that I appreciate, that I think is healthy. So yeah, those are kind of the two.
The spectrum.
The spectrums.
For me, it was, I would say, the encouragers.
Yeah.
And it's not just that they gave 13th place ribbons. It's not just that everything was great, but it was when they found an opportunity to put a coin and repeat that behavior.
Yeah.
Those that would encourage. It was the insightful teacher. It was someone who tried to understand holistically the situation, understand the situation as it played out, not just with the benefit of hindsight, but try to insert themselves as an actor in the situation and help to diagnose. Here's the chess moves that happened in advance. I understand why you tried this, that, and the other. Here's why it didn't work. But they would enter into the situation with me. And the ones similar to you that would give you the long leash, the ones that would say, hey, I trust you in this situation. Make sure I'm informed, but Godspeed and God bless.
Yep.
Go get them. The one that I just, similar to you, it just makes my, is the because I said so.
Yeah.
Like there's very few phrases that would get me as frustrated as someone who, when asked, why are we doing this, just replied, because I said so. Really, I view it as arrogance. It might not be arrogance, but that's how I perceive it when they just say, because I said so.
To that point, that brings so much anxiety to me that with my kids, I try very hard when they ask why, that I do not say because I said so. Now, This could lead to a lot of answers and a lot of whys. What usually is the trump card is because God made it that way.
Right.
That's usually the one I can get away with. But I will not use the because I said so.
Right.
Like,
there's the common diagnosis process called the 5 whys.
Mm-hmm.
That person did not live with a 3-year-old. Because if I could stop at 5 whys, it would have been awesome.
That's right.
To your point, it finally honey, because physics is that way. I don't know beyond just that's the way God made it.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. The trump card.
So the construct of situational leadership, the thing that I appreciated so much about it is that at one level, it's fairly simple. It just describes 4 different approaches that a leader can take to a specific situation and to a specific employee in that situation. But what it also did for me is that it validated that different leadership styles are not only required in various situations, they're actually appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I look at some of the styles like the directive style. Do this, do this, do this, do this. It was very tempting for me as I came into a leader to say, I'm never doing that. I hate it when people do it to me, and I'm never doing it. And situational leadership, and we're going to talk about it, it actually says that there is a place and a time that the most caring thing you can do for an employee is to give them an exact list of things to do. And for me, that helped decode my experiences and say, when I enjoyed being led a certain way, it's not just because that leader was a certain way, it's who I was in that situation and how he or she led in that situation. And then conversely, the leaders that it's like, man, this did not work. This person was a horrible leader. It was as much about who I was in that situation and how they were in that exact same situation. And so situational leadership inserts this relationship between the mindset, the capability, and the confidence of the employee. And then as a leader, as you assess that situation, what leadership approach do you take to most care for the employee? Because I think an employee that is inspired and motivated by their leader is going to attain more and they're going to put more effort in. So we'll dig into this. The first style, they call it the L1 leadership style, is a directive leadership style. This is the leadership style where you tell an employee exactly what to do. You give them timelines, you give them instructions. There's very little room for autonomy. There's very little room for creativity inside of the L1 leadership style. And for most people, you, me, when you first think about this leadership style, you're like, there is no place for this. This is only idiots. This is only the low self-confidence. This is only the arrogant people. This is only people that think they're smarter than everybody that leads this way. I'm never going to an L1 leadership style.
That's right. I hired grown-ups.
Exactly.
I don't need to go to that level, but to your point, there are opportunities.
The opportunity that they highlight is a brand new employee or an employee in a brand new environment. If you think about your first day on the job, whether you get promoted within the company or you take a new job at a brand new company, on that first day, you are very high excitement. You are very high energy, and you are extremely low competence. You know nothing. You don't know where the bathroom is. You don't know the history. You don't know the processes. You don't know anything. In that environment of high excitement and low competence on that first day, situational leadership says the caring thing to do for the employee is to say, Caleb, welcome to the organization. We are so glad to have you here. This morning, what I need you to do is A, B, C, and D. Call me if you have any questions. We're going to meet up again at lunch, and we're going to talk about what the rest of the day looks like. Even for a mid-career person in a new environment, in a new situation, what you're doing is you're taking that energy, you're taking that excitement, and you're harnessing it, you're putting it to use because they want to feel useful. They want to be useful on that first day. And you're providing them clear and concise methods by which they can be useful because they know they don't have competence. They know they don't have confidence. Kind of the worst thing you could do on day one is say, hey, Caleb, welcome to the group. You're a tenured dude. How about you just kind of walk around and see where we need some help? And I trust your judgment. From that very moment, you want to impress your new boss. You want to impress your new leader. And he just said, improve something. You have no idea what something is. What happens is you immediately start to lean on that low competence.
Yep.
As you walk around the room, not knowing who to talk to, not knowing what to do, that low competence starts to emerge out of the shadows and say, am I even in the right place? Why am I here? I don't want to disappoint him. It's to say, as an employee, even a tenured employee enters a new environment, in those first chapters, the right thing to do is to deliver exactly the goals, the mission, the timelines. One question I have for you, Caleb, because I know as employees come into new environments, you have done a good job of giving them direction.
Mm-hmm.
How have you found it best as somebody from your history who really doesn't like a micromanager?
Yeah.
But as a leader, you know there is an era, there is a time, there is a place for micromanagement. How have you found it best to use and to deliver the L1 leadership style?
Specifically around that individual coming into the organization, because it's something that is not natural for me to say, hey, I'm going to take a very directive approach. I've kind of hacked the system a little bit.
Okay.
What I believe in is making a really powerful onboarding process. Now, process, sometimes that gets some people some anxiety, but I believe that there are good processes and there are bad processes. The onboarding process for anybody in any organization is the most critical part of stepping into the environment. We spent a lot of time building up an onboarding guide that essentially would lay out the first 4 months of an employee's stepping into a role. That way, for somebody who doesn't like to sit there each morning and say, here are the 5 things you must do, we essentially copy and pasted it to where now somebody walks in, they already know the 5 things that they must do because we have it a part of a program. And they're learning the things that they need to learn in order to be competent. They're getting to connect with the people they need to connect with in order to do their job well. And at the same time, they feel as though we are feeding into them to grow their skill set. When I look at that new employee, the directive approach, the onboarding process resolves a lot of the things that actually For me personally, I'm like, man, I don't want to sit here and tell you. Back to, I hired a grown-up.
Yeah.
You got your big girl or big boy pants on. I'm paying you a salary. Let's go to work. And in reality, I'm doing them a disservice. And so that's where the onboarding process
That's
comes
really
into
interesting
play.
because you give them a piece of paper that allows them to tick things off the box that gives them the feeling of contribution and it gives them the feeling of progress.
Yeah.
It isn't even necessarily that as a leader, you have to daily deliver the tasks as much as when the employee is needing this L1 style, they have tasks set before them, whether they be training tasks or whether they be contribution tasks to the mission of the organization. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. That's what happens when you have things you don't like, but you need to do. You figure out creative ways to do it.
You automate them. That's right. As the employee continues in the role, what actually happens is that the confidence, the excitement erodes. And it actually erodes typically before the competence comes up. So in day one, they were at least pumped to be here. They didn't know anything, but they were excited to be here. As they come out of that phase, what actually happens first, they start to question themselves. They thought that they would learn faster. Mm-hmm. They thought that they would come up to speed faster. You enter what I have found is really one of the hardest places to lead is the L2 leadership style. I've also found it is the hardest place to be as an employee. And by recognizing that this place exists, you can prevent certain thoughts on the drive home from work by saying, hey, I'm in this L2 phase. I'm not competent yet.
Yep.
And I really am aware of my lack of competency. And I feel like everybody else is aware of my lack of competency. If you can delineate that you're in that phase, you can set structures in place to say, like, for example, this is something that I've done in the past. I refuse to assess whether or not I'm good at a job for the first 6 months that I'm doing the job.
100%.
And it's because I know I'm going to live in this low competence, low confidence phase. If my self-talk gets going too much, I'm going to wind myself up. I'm going to get mad at myself. I'm going to get frustrated. It is to say, as an employee comes into this phase, low confidence, low competence, you as a leader are now going to change your approach. Mm-hmm. We're not going to give single directive. Here's the list. Check, 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 check. We're going to introduce a conversation. Now, as an employee comes in and we're going to talk about the next phase of a project, I, as a leader, am going to welcome the employee into the conversation around what should we do. That's a very important phrase that you as a leader introduced. That was going to stress them out on day one. L1, what should we do? It's a stressful question. But at the right time, at the appropriate time, start introducing the question, what should we do? You as a leader are still going to be the one to make the decision because of their low competence. But you want to start building not just their competence, but their confidence. And by inviting them into the room, inviting them to the table, inviting them to give input, it allows you to explain the background behind why. I, as a leader, may still be deciding 80-90% of the time, but I'm not going to go to the because I said so. I'm going to lay out the map for you. I'm going to explain the moves. It's a coaching opportunity. You're still making the decision, but you're engendering competency and you're engendering confidence into that employee as they are spending more time in a given discipline or in a given role. As I said, being an employee in the L2 phase, it sucks. There's really no way around it. Yeah. As a leader, it's hard to lead someone in an L2 because you can watch their countenance, you can watch their confidence. What are things that you, Caleb, have gone to or learned as a leader, we'll start as a leader, of an employee that's suffering through that L2 phase?
Yeah, this is why the one-on-one is one of the most important tools in a leadership's toolkit, because this is going to give them the platform for them to have those conversations where if you can get to the point where they're expressing their lack of confidence, their lack of competence, that's a win when they're able to express that, because then you can speak into that directly. For me, the one-on-one is the platform that helps manage through this coaching season. The other thing that I look at when it comes to the coaching season is, to your point, the inside baseball. Whether I'm the leader in that season or as somebody who's coaching me, the inside baseball is one of the most powerful things to get that person from that S2 into the S3, because as you're explaining, they're starting to connect the dots of how your mind works. They're starting to think through the other options that they would have employed at that point in time, getting them to think on that higher level versus back to the I told you so or because I said so. Now you're going to be elevating them and progressing them through that. So I think the one-on-ones, the inside baseball, and then also one of the phrases that I really employ at this time is you are here for a reason. We picked you for a reason. I know that there's learning curves, and I know that there are challenges, and I know that you have some things that you wish you could be doing better. Just know I picked you for a reason. You are in the right place. Mm-hmm. That can go a long way with somebody in that L2 category to help them understand, hey, this is normal. This is okay. Because oftentimes, back to that self-talk, you get in that season and you're sitting there like, I'm toast. Everybody's running circles around me, specifically on this situation. I'm not worth it. And so by coming in and having those conversations of, hey, what do you think? Hey, that's great insight. This is actually how I would probably approach it, and these are the pitfalls to watch out for. And by the way, your idea wasn't bad. It just doesn't have the context. And providing them those types of assurances and making them known that they are of value in that moment, I think is so important.
You are expressing confidence in an employee by giving them the inside baseball.
Yeah.
I remember very distinctly the first manager I had in my career that he would bring me into his office and he would explain the chessboard of an upcoming meeting. And we made a presentation that was 97% his idea. It wasn't to the point where we were nudging boxes by one pixel this way and the other, but I was the person that was largely making the presentation for this meeting. But he did it in a way in which I got to see the 3-star general making the plan.
Yeah.
It was a coaching opportunity. It was a mentoring opportunity. As I think about leading in this L2 phase, the part for me, and man, this catches me right between the eyes as I first hear it years ago. But as we said, you as the leader are picking the right answer 70% of the time, 80% of the time. That is not 100% of the time.
That's right.
You, even in L2, you are looking for every possible opportunity to have the employee be the one that selects the outcome. That introduces this painful leadership principle called preference versus principle.
Yeah.
Because they're a different human being, they are going to generally pick different methods to tackling a problem. There are some of them that at their principle aren't right. We should not open a lemonade stand in the passing lane of an interstate. That's a bad idea on its very principle.
Yeah.
But there is a huge world of preference. Do we open a lemonade stand outside of the history building on the campus of the local college, or do we open a lemonade stand outside of the engineering building? We have agreed that we're going to go to a place of higher learning. We have agreed that we're going to do a lemonade stand, but where on campus we set it up, there's probably 20, 30, 50% variance in the outcome.
Yeah.
You're not sure exactly where the right place is. Giving that employee, because again, we are trying to build competence and we're trying to build confidence. So the difference between someone in L2 saying, well, I'm going to invite him in, I'll give him the inside baseball, but at the end of the day, I'm the leader, so I'm still making the decision. That is not L2.
Yeah.
That is a derivative of L1. That is not L2. You as a leader in L2 are looking for every possible scenario to allow that decision to be made by the individual because you want to build up that confidence. The part that I also see here, and this happens in a lot of leaders, some leaders refuse to move to the L2 phase. This is my organization. It's my name on the line. I'm the leader. I have the authority. And what invariably happens is as the employee is ready to transition to L2, and that ready to transition to L2 is when the morning sheen wears off.
Yeah.
When the excitement of being here wears off. Now, for an employee, that might be 3 months. That might be 6 months. You promote somebody, they're super pumped to be there. 6 months later, they might not be pumped to be there. That W-2 doesn't last.
Yeah.
The excitement of the W-2 doesn't last. If a leader refuses to advance to the L2 style and continues to use the L1 style, they will absolutely stunt the growth of that employee. They will absolutely stunt both the confidence and the competence of the employee, and then in the broader sense of their group and of their organization. They create an employee base that is fully dependent on them, which maybe in some weird derivative, you can think, well, that's job security, but it's absolutely constraining an organization to the leader's calendar, to the leader's creativity, to the leader's mindset. It's not a proper way of leading. And in fact, I would say most organizations, if that's identified, that is a disqualifying act by a leader. Whether you find them as a vice president, whether you find them as a team leader, if you find leadership that refuses to lead beyond the L1 style, that can become a disqualifying act of a leader if they refuse to move into a conversation in which they are hoping that the employee is able to produce the path forward.
To the point of job security, of everybody is dependent upon me, that argument is a fallacy in my opinion, because at the end of the day, if you're able to grow an individual through the L1 to the L2 and then further through the stages, you are creating an organization that by and large is going to thrive under your tutelage, under your leadership. If you keep them in that L1 box, any moment that they're going to step out into the broader organization, they're going to have to say, I have to go back and check on that answer. I have to get approval for that. When you do that, you're not only slowing down the opportunities to win, but you're also putting that individual in a situation where if they don't feel empowered, they're going to go find someplace. If they've reached a level of competence and confidence that they need to move past that stage, they're going to go find some place that is going to take them to the next stage.
That's right.
Of situational leadership.
It's not a sustainable place as an employee to sit in a low confidence, low competence environment. You may stay there for a period because of some other exterior factor, but you're looking for somewhere else.
Yeah.
You're looking for an opportunity, one, to contribute, and two, to feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's very few employees that in the long term want to be handed a checkbox in perpetuity. And we're going to talk about it later. That's actually a problem if you're an employee that in perpetuity says, hey, just tell me exactly what to do.
Yeah.
The third level of leadership, the L3 level of leadership, recognizes that an employee's competence most often increases at a faster rate than their confidence. So now that they've been invited into the conversation, now that they're hearing the chess more and more and more, they're experiencing more situations out there. If we're doing it the right way, it's more likely than not that their recommendations are going to get better and better and better faster than their opinion of their recommendations. And there's not one day where they go to bed in L2 and they wake up in L3. There's a transition period as this employee is involved in these conversations and they hear the mindsets, they hear the prioritizations, they hear the histories, they hear the goals and the missions of the organization. They're going to start to piece together constellations of situations, and their recommendations are going to be getting better and better in these conversations. The L3 phase as a leader is where you are now transitioning. We're still having that conversation, but I'm going to more and more transition to deferring to your recommendation. it may sound like, okay, well, what's the difference between L2 and L3? Okay, maybe in L2, 90% of the time, 80% of the time the leader picks. In L3, maybe 20% of the time the leader picks. There's a couple aspects that if you're not careful, you can stay stuck in the L2. As we think about an L2 in which it's we talk and the leader decides, to an L3, which is we talk and the employee decides, as a leader, you have to more and more make sure that you are seeking their opinion first.
Yes. Yeah.
Nobody ever sits you down when you become a leader and says, just so you know, the organization is now going to weigh your opinion more than they ever have. Good ones and bad ones, they're going to listen to what you say. Brainstorming out loud can be destructive as a leader. But what is true is as you move into that L3 leadership style, you need to start withholding your opinion more and more and more, even times of never expressing your opinion. Mm-hmm. We're still going to have the conversation. I'm going to ask you, what do you think? I'm going to ask you, what would you do? I'm going to ask you, why would you do? But increasingly, I'm never going to answer those questions as the leader. I'm only going to be getting the answers from the employee. And in so much as we're headed the right direction, or in so much as we're in the space of preference over principle, mm-hmm. I'm just going to keep going with it. I'm never going to say what I would do. Because again, we are now in a situation where they have the competence. They're giving the right answer, but they still have a lower confidence. So by me saying, Caleb, that's great. I love that idea. This is the right way to go. Absolutely. I hadn't thought of that. Those things are all intended to not influence the outcome, but what am I doing? I'm building confidence. I'm building confidence inside of that employee. Here's a question. It's a little bit of a curveball question. As we think about the confidence, there are some employees that are overconfident, right? Whether it be L1, whether it be L2, whether it be any of the levels that we've talked about, there are some employees that they say, I don't know why he keeps asking me these questions. I know exactly what we should do. Or he asked me what we should do and then we don't do it. As a leader, what have you done where you look at the situation and you say, man, I want to include him in the conversation, but we just aren't there yet on the ideas. And he's getting frustrated that we're still using my outcome, but we got to stay there because he's going to put a lemonade stand in the passing lane of the interstate if we're not careful. How do you lead in an employee that's not following this prescribed confidence curve that situational leadership talks about?
Yeah, when we look at L2 and L3, one of the things that I've thought about, going back to that inside baseball reference, L2 is I'm providing the inside baseball of why this is the decision, why we want to head this direction, or giving more context and the inside baseball of what I would do in that situation, just to firm it up. In the L3, I'm asking them to give inside baseball. I want them to show their work.
Yes.
And so I'm asking a lot of questions. For somebody who walks into that conversation overconfident, the questioning, the showing the work is the most important thing to help highlight why we aren't going to end up into that outcome. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes, if you work with the right questions, if you're asking them to show their work, the answer is, I just feel that that's the way it should be.
Right.
Or they start going down the path and they realize that their conclusion may be slightly off.
Yeah.
The inside baseball and the showing the work for me has been one of the key tools in allowing somebody to either see for themselves that their confidence may be misplaced, or allow them to at least adjust their position of, okay, maybe this isn't the right path because it's how I feel versus here are the practical steps of how I got to that conclusion.
That's really well said. Right? Because it may be that they have overconfidence as they enter the conversation. It's not as a leader that you're ever taking a direct shot at them.
No.
You're not taking a direct shot at, hey, buddy, I've been here for 10 years. You've been here for 6 minutes. Who do you think you are? You're not taking that approach. But it is to say you're carefully crafting the conversation around the whys and the whats that lead to the outcome. And hopefully you can do so in a way where you're introducing variables that they didn't consider.
Correct.
And they can hopefully see the value of adding those variables into the calculus. It hasn't occurred often for me, but there have been employees that their confidence is just way higher than their competence. Many times you can coach them there. There's been a few times where finally you just have to say, like, because they get upset that they aren't given a longer leash.
That's right.
And you just kind of have to say, here's where the leash is right now. Here's the issues that have arisen. You don't go there quickly, but if an employee just keeps kicking against it, there are times where I've had to say, I know you're confident, but here's an objective view of performance. We aren't yet there to add length to the leash.
We've gotten there in the past with individuals who have come in and their thought process is, in order for me to provide value, I must be generating the good ideas. Yeah. The common pathway with them is it's not about you providing value through your ideas. Those will come. What we want you to do is to build the perspective to understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's another element that we use is perspective building, because you'll have an individual who come in and say, this is what we shall do. I've thought about all the other elements. Okay, well, have you thought about how it's going to impact sales? Have you thought about how it's going to impact product support? Have you thought about how it's going to impact marketing or engineering? And the reality is somebody stepping into that role may not have lived those other lives.
Yes.
Or have not had enough time to build relationships with those other departments. They need that perspective given to them in order to help calibrate their confidence. The other thing that I think about as well is with the confidence element, you have to be very sensitive in the approach. You could, if you take a shot at the individual, you could take their confidence from being overconfident.
Yeah.
And instead of calibrating it to where you need it to be, you could take it and send it all the way back down.
That's right.
Now you've effectively put an employee that you have been building and you've put them back to square one.
Right.
Leaders need to be very careful in this situation.
And it's easy as a leader to be defensive in those situations because their overconfidence, it comes off as an affront to your authority, or it comes off as an affront to your experience. There's a temptation to say, who do you think you are coming in here? Again, we're in L2 or we're in L3. They should be coming in here. You have to hold that conversation. You have to stay in control of that conversation as a leader, but you should not be moving in a way that reverses the progress of involving the employee in that conversation. So the final stage of this model here, the L4 stage, is where the employee has now lots of experience, where they have good competence. They also have seen through these conversations that more and more we're going the direction that I recommended. And so their confidence starts to come up. This is where, as a leader, you really start to trust the employee that they don't need a conversation.
Yeah.
We don't have to spend time anymore. I can give commander's intent, and I can really trust that you're going to figure out the context, you're going to figure out the priorities, you're going to figure out the actions, you're going to execute. You'll call if there's issues, we'll touch base, but it's not this lengthy conversation anymore. It's really more of, hey, you got this, go forth and prosper. One of the things that I've felt this before, I know every leader feels this. There's this little voice in the back of your head as you're leading in an L4 fashion, and that is, am I even needed?
You bet.
As a leader, I've succeeded. I have created a competent, confident person, and I'm empowering them. They're giving the presentations now. They're talking about what they have done, and they're using the right pronouns there. They did it. I wasn't part of it. I'm sitting in a presentation in which my team is killing it.
Yeah.
Did I just work myself out of a job? Am I redundant here? What would you say to the leader that feels like they're in a risky position because they've done so well at professional development of their team?
I would say, first off, I've had that exact
Everyone
thought.
has.
It's especially as I've seen some of my team members who have elevated themselves to deliver on things that I'm like, that's better than anything I could have ever output.
Yes.
I've thought about that many times. And for me, when somebody feels that they've worked themselves out of a job, my argument is always, you've actually succeeded in doing something that not many leaders get the opportunity to, which is you've left a legacy that can live on beyond yourself. When you get to that point, now it's starting to look at what else can you bring to the organization? What other passions do you have that you can now start to focus in on and grow that element of the business up? Oftentimes, when you have worked an organization to a point where you are no longer needed on a day-to-day basis, there are other opportunities within that organization that are dying for somebody to come in and build up to that same place. And so you're just working yourself into the next category of your legacy. That's what I often think about when I get the opportunity to step away. Now it's, okay, I need to start putting my targets on the next thing that I really want to attack.
Yeah, that's right.
The organization will oftentimes follow suit of, hey, we see that we have a need here. Let us help bolt that need onto you so you can grow it up from there.
Right. I think the part that becomes a risk, and this also exists in corporate America, where for whatever reason there's a group that has a lot of L4s in it, and the leader just kind of packs it in.
Yeah.
Like the leader's like, sweet, I don't got to do anything. Now I'll take some credit here and there to keep my job. That's obviously a horrible derivative. And typically those people became L4, not because of you. They typically became an L4 because they predate you.
That's right.
They were L4s when you showed up. But what you're highlighting is the scale, the capacity of you as a leader to move beyond team leadership, to move beyond manager. It requires that a increasing percentage of your organization is operating at the L3 or L4.
Mm-hmm.
L1 takes a ton of time.
Yes.
L2 takes a ton of time. The ability to have 50 projects under you, the ability to have 500 people under you, the ability to have 50 people under you, it requires that many of them are operating at an L3 or L4 level. And because of turnover, because of promotion, because of people moving to other geographies, you have to be constantly working to advance the level of your organization, not because it then goes on quote unquote cruise control. The leader that just loves that their organization's on cruise control is not a contributing member. They should be worried about what we're saying here.
Yeah.
But as a leader who has the ability to advance people through the situational leadership curve, there will always be a job for you.
Yeah.
An organization may misrecognize it, but on the free market, wherever you land, there will be a job. That is one of the highest functioning leaders, is someone that can take a brand new employee at an L1, where I'm going to tell you what you need to do today before lunch, to an L4. It might take a year. It might take 2 years, depending on what the role is. But I've felt it. I know everyone has felt it. But man, you've got to kick against that, because if you instead say, well, I just got to revert back to L3 or I got to revert back to L2, you're limiting yourself and you're limiting the organization, and you're going to cause problems for yourself and for the organization if you keep doing that. One other thing, and we didn't delineate this too much at the beginning, but we're never broad brushing a single employee with being a certain level.
That's right. That's right. It's the situation at hand.
This is very much a situation. It's a task. And so it is possible that an employee that's working on your team, or it's possible that you as an employee, in the task at 10 o'clock, you're an L4. And in the task at 2 o'clock, you're an L2.
Mm-hmm.
An example that I remember from your organization, there's supporting current products, like knowing the technical details to take a call and rapidly engage with the grower, get an answer, and get them back to planting. And then there's curriculum creation, which is a new product, which is emerging. And we have to figure out, how are we going to teach the dealer about this emerging product to then turn around and teach the grower? We had employees that were killing it in one of the domains, really coming up the curve in the other domain. How do you as a leader navigate those situations where maybe at 10 o'clock, you're taking an L4 approach with this employee, and then at 2 o'clock, you're taking more of an L2 approach? How have you seen that work as a leader?
it comes back to the individual knowing that you are doing what is best for them. I think that's you got to have that in order to move back and forth between these. Because if an employee doesn't believe that, you're going to go from an L4 to an L2, and they're going to feel like, I just lost favor.
Yes.
That is very damaging. So you have to build up that relationship to a point where they say, hey, I know what we're doing here is for the betterment of me as an individual. That allows you to navigate those categories fairly well. I also would say, if you're operating at an L4 for the morning and then you get into an L2 situation in the afternoon, you then have to have a little bit of a deeper conversation of why we're going through the inside baseball, why we're talking through this situation, just to make sure that that individual doesn't feel like you're yanking my leash back. For example, with new product, that was often the discussion of, well, I know what to do. It's having the conversation of perspective building, of establishing the inside baseball of how we go to market with certain products, and just really building that up, and then getting into the discussion at the task at hand. So there is that initial asterisk that you have to put on the conversation for somebody who is navigating multiple categories.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really important thing, especially somebody who is operating in L4 often. They're going to sniff it right away. They're going to identify it right away. So putting that asterisk on it and say, hey, this is why we're having the conversation. And being open and honest about it actually helps tremendously from what I've found.
Yeah. I would never use the terminology of L4 and L2 or anything like that. But I think up front, you start to use the language of, hey, you are really good at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have demonstrated competency and proficiency at this thing. And part of your development, I'd like to introduce you to a new thing.
Yeah.
Even using that type of language is going to introduce that there's a different category. The other thing that you're keeping an eye on is the confidence layer.
Mm-hmm.
You have a perspective and they have a perspective of what their competence is in the new domain. But as a leader, you're keeping an eye on the confidence side of it. If the employee has normative behaviors, they're going to feel a little uneasy in this new thing, especially if you have a leader have defined it as a new thing. And so they might not sniff it out as directly as we might otherwise think. If they go in with too high of confidence and they're like, well, I was really good as a baseball player, this basketball thing, it should be fine. They're both balls, right?
Michael Jordan probably disagree on that.
Michael Jordan wouldn't, exactly. It didn't work out as well for him. He might have been an L4 in one of those and L2 in another. That's where I'm going to probably, not deceptively, but I'm going to probably poke at the confidence side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really try to, maybe my conversation isn't direct around, okay, I'm going to decide on this, but I'm going to, again, you've said it already, I'm going to expose the inside baseball of the new game.
Yeah. Yeah.
They should smell and sense that like, oh, there's a different rule set that we're operating in this new environment. I value this leader and their opinion because of experiences that we've had in the past. Maybe I'll defer on the front end of this. If we're going to take on new and challenging things, the learning curve has to happen the same way the learning curve happened on the last one.
The other thing, as I think through it, that learning curve, the dynamic also changes when it's not just the individual contributor that's moving through that, but it's when you're a leader of leaders and you're working somebody through that L1, L2, L3, L4 phase in the different situations they interact with as a leader now has other consequences because they're dealing with individuals that are reporting to them, which is a very interesting dynamic that as I've continued down the path of being a leader of leaders, I've really started to try and calibrate that because the impact is greater.
Yes.
You're now not affecting one person's confidence. You're potentially affecting 3 or 4 people's confidence. Yes. Making sure that as you're moving through that, understanding what else am I affecting? If this individual is going to move from an L4 to an L3 or an L2 in this situation, am I able to help them cross that bridge with their employees as well?
Yeah. That would be a perfect example of an L4 individual contributor becoming a team leader.
100%.
They are pretty close to an L4 in one domain and an L1 in another domain.
Yeah.
Navigating those waters of, hey, yeah, at 10 a.m., when you're doing the thing, I trust you. Commander's intent all day long. At 2 p.m., when we talk about how to do one-on-ones, I might hand you a checklist.
Yeah.
I might hand you a list of things you've got to do and say as a team leader. A big part of it is, has the individual seen themselves being poured into and developed by you as a leader, that they do give you the benefit of the doubt as you take different approaches across the day. Caleb, this is awesome stuff. We are coming up on time here. I am only halfway through the topics that I want to talk about on situational leadership. Would you mind sticking around for another episode and we can continue talking about not just situational leadership, but its implication on who we are as leaders?
Yeah, you bet. I would love to.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next time. If you are brand new to podcasting, first, I am so glad to have you on the team. The next thing you're going to want to do is to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player. Then go ahead and leave a 5-star review for this podcast. Don't forget to mention how inspirational I am. Then you'll want to tell at least 5 friends about Grody and Unprofessional. And finally, send me a note at justin@grody.io once you're done. I am really excited that you are here. For those that have been listening to podcasts for years and know exactly what you're doing, I trust you. You got this. Send me a note at justin@grody.io if something comes up. Thanks for your time. Let's do this again soon.